Hi and welcome to Jazz North Online, our monthly catch-up with all that's going on with jazz in the North. I'm Megan Rowe.
And I'm John Pope. Thanks for joining us once again. We've got another show packed with great things that are happening across the North, including jam sessions in a public park,
the inside story on running a venue during a pandemic from York's Harkirit Boparai,
and new music from Northern polymath Craig Scott, Manchester trumpeter Graham South, and a clip of BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year finalist Alex Clarke.
Sounds like a lot of interesting stuff, but let's catch up on the news. Don't forget, if you've got something interesting that you think we need to know about, drop us a comment below or send us an email at news@jazznorth.org.
And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Of course! Okay, let's begin.
Help Musicians UK have announced the latest recipients of their Peter Whittingham Jazz Award, their long-running support scheme to help musicians realise their ambitious projects. And we're delighted this year that two acts from the Jazz North family are among that lineup. We have the fantastic jazz prog fusion band Yeoh Trio, led by Leeds Conservatoire graduate Liam Dittar, and the composer and improviser Lara Jones, one-third of the incredible Jay Frisco. Yes. Lara and Yeoh Trio have both been recipients of support from Jazz North Introduces, which is our programme for supporting young musicians, as well as recipients of Manchester Jazz Festival's excellent Hot House programme. With HMUK behind them, we know they're going to be cooking up some fantastic projects, and we'll be reaching out to them to find out what it is that they are cooking up. So stay tuned for updates.
In live music news, venues are still exploring and working on their programmes in the digital realm. The Globe in Newcastle, run by Pink Lane Jazz Co-op, have been running Sunday night gigs throughout the year and look to be continuing to 2021, with live streamed gigs hopefully opening up to live audiences soon. They've got the wonderful Zoe Gilby coming in on December the 17th with a diverse array of bands already confirming for next year. Head to theglobenewcastle.bar to check out their programme and grab a ticket.
That'll be a great show with Zoe Gilby.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Festivals are also adapting their plans for 2021. John recently dropped in to one of our online meetups for Northern promoters. What was the score?
I spoke to a group of promoters from across the North, and it was really interesting to see how many different approaches are being touted. Hull Jazz Festival, for example, are talking about rejuvenating their hybrid stream and live audience gig model alongside a year-long programme of 12 commissions, so they're going to spread their activity out across the year. Manchester Jazz Festival, on the other hand, are looking at options to reduce their footprint and work with a smaller and more focused number of locations that can work for a transitory audience who will mostly be outside. Whilst Ribble Valley Jazz Festival are looking to bring their streaming programme to a wider set of ears, including young people and audiences in schools, while still hoping to stage some of their events for their festival in May. In these really uncertain times for live music, it's great to see festival programmers getting super creative and looking for ways to change up how they operate.
Also, these drop-in sessions, they're going to continue, aren't they?
Yes, Heather Spencer and the team at Jazz North will continue to run online drop-in sessions for artists and promoters to meet, discuss plans, look for feedback, and share their experiences. Plus, there is a new strand of pitch-based sessions where artists can grow their networks and promoters can discover projects that maybe they haven't heard about, maybe they don't know about yet. If you'd like to get involved, get along to the Jazz North website, that's jazznorth.org, or drop Heather Spencer a line for a schedule of upcoming sessions. That's heather@jazznorth.org. Cool.
Now, it's no secret that this time of the year can be hard, and especially with everything that 2020 has thrown at us. A lot of people might be going through a tough time. I know I am. It's been a nightmare, but we're all going through this together, so please don't feel like you're on your own. The pressures of a lowered income, family stresses, lockdown, and whatever else might be going on could make this season a particularly tricky celebration.
It's true, but it's very important for us all to remember that we're not alone in this, like Meg says. Help Musicians UK are reaching out with advice for musicians facing financial hardship at this tricky point. If you go to the coronamusicians.info page, that's Corona Musicians is all one word, you can find links to resources that will help anyone facing a financial struggle. Also, they have a dedicated mental health helpline run by Music Minds Matter, which is available round the clock for anybody in the sector who might be struggling there as well. You can find links to those and to other resources down in the description of this video.
I mean, the jazz community is pretty on it with that anyway, I would say. Some of the bands that I've been in or worked with or am in have been so supportive, and we need to just make sure that we are continuously being there for each other over this time.
Yeah, don't be shy. Get in touch with people. If you need it, or if you need to give help, then, we're all here for each other. So let's be good to each other. Just before we move on, though, I'd like to ask, in the spirit of that community, of that family, for some help from our audience. In the next couple of episodes, we're going to be presenting features on jazz radio in the North, jazz podcasts, and some of our established and up-and-coming record labels. If you run a jazz radio label, or if you and any of your friends have got a podcast, or if you've got a favourite imprint that you've got discs coming out on that you want to shout us about, get in touch. We'd love to hear your recommendations. Hit us up, get on news@jazznorth.org and tell us all about it.
So let's move on and hear from some of that wonderful Jazz North family right now. We've got a trio of clips coming up from our amazing correspondent Helena Summerfield. First, she sat down for an interview with Nokuthular Zondi to talk about what living and making music in the North has meant for her. Let's check it out.
Shh, can I let you into a little secret? I'm not really a northerner. I'm originally from the Midlands, but after 20 years of living in Manchester and with no intention of leaving, I consider myself an honorary Manc. I caught up with fellow adopted northerner Nokuthular Zondi from the band Ubunye to find out what originally brought her up north and how she got into the jazz scene.
Today, walking by the rain, sun my window pane, it's in the eyes of others.
So I was just wondering what it was like growing up in South Africa and whether you were born into a musical family.
Oh, hi. I would just say yes. Most of my family, we can sing, but I learned a lot from my youngest at primary school at age of 6, because in South Africa there is a competition, so each we compete with other schools. So I was the what? Yes, we do. So we just like kind of choral classic music. Mm-hmm. So we learn some notes, and then we compete. Like we learn like maybe 3 months. After 3 months, we can compete. So I started doing that at age of 6 till high school.
Wow.
Yes. So doing that school, and then I was singing when at age of 18. There is a group in South Africa. South Africa is like we all sing. Mm-hmm. When you talk, you sing, "Hello, Helena."
How are you?
Exactly.
That's nice. So we should do that more here.
So I was joining the groups outside, like a community group. Yeah. There was a group called Dynamics. So the Dynamics was a popular group. We entered the competition called Share to Fame. It's kind of X Factor, and we won. So since I was singing that group, we met the guy called Ian Story.
Okay. So
Ian Story was interested to our group. He just talked to our manager if it was okay to take us to UK. Oh, that was a good news for us because everybody was dreaming to go abroad. I'm one of them. Mm-hmm. Then in 1997, That was my first time to travel to UK. We stayed like 1 month, so we are looking for the job. We didn't get paid, but the flying tickets, accommodation was already the people, they were already paid for us. So I went back to South Africa. Then I came back again the following year, 1998. We stayed 3 months. So in that time, we're getting paid, singing in schools, doing the kind of a stage playing about our culture. After we finished that, we're doing kind of a workshop with the kids, teaching. Yes, we did. We're teaching them our song in our language. They were so interested. Can you imagine if you're teaching someone like, say, like Q, and saying you need to say, clicking song. Yeah. So yeah, they enjoyed, and I did enjoy working with the kids. So I had a break from 1998 till 2006. It's when I came full time to UK, but it was like a 10-month tour, then go back home.
Right.
Coming back like January, then October, going back home for Christmas, all those things. So the guy was called Ian Story. The group was called Mighty Zulu Nation. 2006, I worked for him. And then 2007, with other guys, we decided that now, because we know everything, I think we can do by ourselves.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't good enough. Imagine if I'm staying in your house, then you provide me for everything, then leaving you and then start to be independent. It was so hard.
Yeah.
But we managed. We're all okay. We're still here, as you see. So 2007, I met Dave Evans. We were doing a project, one of the school called Garforth Academy. Yeah. We're doing our stuff, and then Dave gave us a song to learn a song with the kids in Zulu. So we did a project like in 6 weeks. So I think Dave, because to him, he was so excited to get the group, because he used to work with Mzu Valley back at home in South Africa, Kwamashu. So he was so excited, oh God, I just found a group. So Dave decided to open the group. Even though when they opened the group, I wasn't there. There was yeah, I wasn't there because I was raising my daughter, Fiona. She's 11 years now. You know, if you're a parent, that's a job to do. So I stopped a little bit. I had a break. I would just say I had a break for singing. Then at 2014, I joined the band Ubunye. So to me, it was familiar because I met Dave 2008, and then the guy Olane and Tandanani, I already know them, so it was easy to meet the guys. About at that time, I didn't know how to sing jazz. I was so lost. I'm a gospel singer, I worship, Then to me, even though it was hard, if you're a musician, you're willing to learn everything,
I think there are links between gospel and jazz singing and singing from the soul, singing from the heart.
Yes.
And having freedom as well, to improvise lines and not just be limited by the notes on the page. I'd say there's lots of, crossovers between gospel and jazz.
And jazz. Yes.
That's I'd never guess. So obviously we're in a period of lockdown at the moment, and I was just wondering how the band have continued to be creative, and have you managed to perform at all during the lockdown period?
What happened during the lockdown, because after Jazz North in Manchester, I think it was happening 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, in Manchester. we did our EP.
Mhm.
And then during the lockdown, we just decided we need to do our album. We finished our album, but at the moment it's not out. So lockdown, it wasn't easy.
No.
It wasn't easy. The last performance, it's fresh, London Jazz Festival. We on stream, I think last week. So we managed to stream, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Very excited to hear there's an album on its way. I should definitely look out for that. That's brilliant.
We managed to do album, yeah.
I think that's really good news. That's brilliant. Oh,
Thank you.
well, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's very brave of Helena to reveal her secret there.
Yeah, definitely.
So next up, Helena is going to take us to Alexandra Park in her adopted Manchester, where some enterprising musicians have been taking their music outdoors. Let's see what's happening.
I'm here in Alexandra Park in Manchester because I've heard that Sylvie Heath from Creative Heights is organising some socially distanced jam sessions. I've grabbed my sax and I'm going to check it out.
And so we came here to Alexandra Park, which is my local park, because I had this space in mind, which is a nice platform sheltered area. So I just came to check it out to see if it would be appropriate. And it was a Sunday morning when I came here. I was like on my run to check it out, and there was a group of people practicing capoeira. And I just thought, oh, what a coincidence.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, like here I am looking for this space to perform Brazilian music, and there's a group in this space doing this Brazilian art form with the movement and the music. So I get chatting to the teacher of Algiers, because I'm there, I'm all excited, going, oh my goodness, what's people here playing this? And he very kindly invites me to join in the class, which I'm very pleased about, because I knew about capoeira because Justine, who I play with, also practiced capoeira, and it was something that I wanted to try out because of my love for Brazilian culture. And so decided to use the space for performance because it seemed absolutely fine. And I advertised the performance for our friends and family to come, which they did, and then we also advertised it so that at the end of the performance we'd open up to a Brazilian jazz jam session for anybody
Fab.
to come and join in. So I had people from Salford University come, a couple of my friends, people from the capoeira group came to listen, and then everybody joined in and we had this amazing jam afterwards, and it was the first time that people would play together for a lot of us since March. Everybody was just smiling and beaming.
I think, yeah, musicians have really missed connecting with other musicians, just being in the same space and making music together. So I think it's brilliant.
Yeah,
And bringing it outside.
yeah. So it was really successful, and everybody was like, let's do it again. So I said, okay. So ever since then, I've been hosting the same style, this Brazilian jazz music jam sessions here in the park every other week, and it's been great. The lockdown that we're in at the moment means that we can't be outside of more than we've got more than 2 people. So we've changed the style from what we did have, music stands and our music and drum kits and PAs and things, to just, okay, I thought, what can we do that we can still play together, but it's a lot easier, so that we can just be in pairs, or if the authorities come, we can
Pack up and run away.
Just be like in 2 people. I thought,
I'm
well,
walking in the park with my saxophone.
Exactly, I'm just playing with one of them. So I thought, let's do free improv. That way we can just, let's keep it acoustic and we'll do free improv, which we did today and 2 weeks ago, and that's worked really well. So it's been a way that we can just easily get together and still play and improvise in this space.
Brilliant.
I love that. Although it's maybe not the best environment for a huge pedal board.
Maybe not. But it's great to see Sylvie and the crew there making music in the fresh air. We'll have a little bit more from Helena coming later on, but right now we've got a new face to introduce to you.
Yes, BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year finalist Alex Clarke, although now studying in Warwick, is a northerner through and through. She spoke to us about her journey with the saxophone and all about the experience of taking part in one of the most prestigious competitions in the world.
I grew up in South Cheshire and I started playing the piano back in junior school. And like most kids of that age, I was handed a recorder, joined the school wind band. I feel like there's only so far you can go on a recorder, so I quickly moved on to the flute. And then when I was in year 8 at school, I remember we went away on a wind band weekend and I could hear the jazz band rehearsing in the room next door, and I thought, that sounds great, I really want to do that. So when I got back, I badgered my parents for a saxophone. They finally gave in, and yeah, haven't really looked back since. Applications opened for the BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year back in sort of March time, right at the start of lockdown, and sitting around at home overthinking things as you do, I thought, you know what, why don't I give it a go? I always knew about it, but never really felt like it was the right moment to apply. But with all that free time on my hands, I dug out some old videos of me playing and also remotely recorded with Tom Kincaid from up in Manchester a version of Stardust and submitted a couple of videos to them. Yeah, then it all happened quite quickly really. I found out that I was through to the final 5 and went down to London a few weeks ago and had the most brilliant weekend filming. I mean, it was just great. I loved every second of it. Just being there and having the chance to play with Nikki Yeoh's Trio and meeting the other finalists. Everyone was so different, which was great. You know, everyone had really different musical influences and all sounded really individual. Yeah, I just tried not to treat it as a competition because for me, music shouldn't really be competitive. That's not what it's about collaboration. So beforehand, tried not to practice too much right before the gig, you know, just blew through a couple of standards, not even the tunes that I was going to play. I just played some things that I enjoyed playing, and then beforehand I just sat, had a drink, ate my sandwich, chilled out, and then went on and treated it like any other gig.
Wow, that's really awesome stuff. That was an original composition of Alex's called Before You Arrived, and you heard playing with her the incredible Nikki Yeoh on piano and the wonderful Mondesir brothers, Michael and Mark, on bass and drums, respectively.
Absolutely love it. What's next?
There has been a lot of talk about the struggles that musicians are facing and about the support that they've received and the institutions have received, but we don't hear very frequently from the people who actually work at and run our beloved venues that make what we do possible. So I sat down and I spoke to Harkirit Boparai from York, where he runs the Crescent Community Centre, to find out about his involvement with the Music Venues Trust, and he gave me the straight dope on what's really happening to our beloved venues and what needs to be done.
First of all, I'd say that the biggest threat to venues is probably the fact that around 95% of our membership don't own the spaces they operate in. And so, for example, here at the Crescent, the Working Men's Club sold the building to us. We don't pay, we pay mortgage. We don't pay a landlord who, after a year of maybe not getting, rent to the levels he is expected, would probably be quite tempted to sign any sort of deal with a property developer. And no matter how much funding or how much goodwill we can send a venue, that is a real systemic threat. And this was a systemic threat even before this, I'm a big believer that creative people need to own the spaces that they operate in, and that will be the only way of truly protecting them. So I think that's like a big thing that a lot of people don't think too much about, is that there's often this other gatekeeper involved, a landlord, who really might not care at all about the cultural output of that venue. I think the other main thing is the actual costs involved in doing a gig. Even before the pandemic, I think people underestimate what it takes to even put on like a small kind of £5 show in terms of your costs of opening the doors, getting security, an engineer, marketing it, staffing it, and so on. That often a lot of gigs are run as a loss. And essentially, our whole live music sector is basically subsidized by the alcohol industry. So often when, we're making deals with artists or deciding on a certain price to set our tickets at, and an audience might complain, oh, it's too expensive, or it's too, there's all sorts of, I think, misunderstandings about how this equation works. But in a time where, let's look, for example, at the idea of tier 3, all these tiers are probably going out the window a little bit now. But if we look at, for example, tier 3, where you were allowed to do a gig, but you weren't allowed to sell booze at the gig.
Right.
That actually, even though a lot of venues had created, for the ones that were successful in getting cultural recovery funding, had created, business plans to put on some socially distanced gigs, get engineers some work, get artists some work, keep the doors open and so on. It all suddenly fell apart at the idea of like, oh wait, but if we can't sell alcohol at these gigs, like none of it's going to work. And I think we really should take stock of that and really think like, why is it that all this cultural activity that we put so much, emphasis on being an amazing thing, rightly so, is in effect subsidized by the alcohol industry? And is that the situation we want to be in? And how do we maybe start to move away from that situation? Because I think moving away from that would probably be not only healthier in like a literal sense of people's health, but also more sustainable long-term and have better creative outcomes long-term as well. We shouldn't be balancing our cultural activity on alcohol sales. As much as I enjoy a drink at a gig, and I think it's, to some extent like a fundamental part of it, I don't think that should be the financial imperative for it happening. So I think, that's kind of like a couple of things that I think people from the outside might often not get their heads around in the same way.
We're talking a little bit about
some of the ways that things could potentially change, some of the ideas about maybe being a little bit creative, or maybe finding ways to do the things that we do and maintain those practices outside of the box a little bit. And obviously right now, as you said before, when we were recording this, things look like they might be changing rapidly again into a situation of being shut down. But you mentioned that that you had been planning a return to some sort of live activity at the Crescent.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about the solution that you needed to come up with to get around restrictions, and what sort of things needed to be put in place, and
what it would have looked like,
what that might have looked like if you'd been able to do it?
So we were lucky enough in September to partner with, again, a couple of other venues through the York Music Venue Network we'd created, which is another reason why I think it's really important that we build local networks of venues that talk to each other and help each other. We did a series of outdoor concerts where we kind of partnered with a local space who had like an outdoor garden that we could do things in, and we helped program it and market it and so on. And it was a really good opportunity to look at how much all these extra requirements would cost. And it kind of felt like it would probably be about £500 to £600 per gig, as like just for example, in the guidelines, it talks about having a sound engineer who's dedicated to the desk, and then a separate one to handle, changing leads and so on and so forth, so that you're not mixing. That's one example. Talks about stewards for the toilets, to monitor toilet queues. I think every venue in the country suddenly furiously started ringing up table service companies who are kind of offering like app solutions and things like that. Yeah. Obviously, lots of plastic everywhere. Ticket looks, box officing. There was a whole raft of measures that really just meant the cost of doing a gig doubled or tripled. And it kind of meant for a lot of places that it wasn't that feasible to do any gigs until there was some sort of funding to help get through that. We were at the Crescent successful in getting cultural recovery funding, which was help us to put in those measures, like, retrofit the venue, and also make the gigs balanced to submit, given that our capacity was being reduced from 250 to about 50. We just started to put all that stuff in place. We were going to announce a series of socially distanced gigs with mostly local artists who were, incredibly out of work at the moment. And yeah, we were going to announce that this week, but we're now in the first week of lockdown. So we're kind of putting a pin in that slightly. I'm hoping maybe that we might be able to do something around Christmas, but it's kind of wait and see how that develops as well. But yeah, I feel like the biggest restrictions were actually a really interesting one. Has been around, I don't know if you picked up on this, has been around this distinction between what is a professional musician and what is an amateur musician.
I would love to hear about this. I would love to hear what the official guidelines are on this.
So essentially, there's been a lot of emphasis, I think, because Tory governments are very keen to keep people at work wherever possible. You could only do certain things if the band were professional musicians. So, for example, unless they were professional musicians, if they were amateur musicians, you'd have to maintain social distancing between the band, or things like that would make it very difficult, particularly for larger bands. And when we really tried to push them and how you defined it, I think the only thing that we could settle at, because there was a reluctance to actually define it, was whether that person got paid or not. which kind of made a mockery of the whole thing anyway, because of course you're hoping that the musicians get paid regardless. I fear that we are kind of, this is going to have real long-term impacts in terms of like what bands form of the future, the bands of tomorrow, the musicians of tomorrow. I also really fear that the general culture or attitude towards the arts is going to have like a massive impact. I mean, Rishi Sunak telling everyone, that their jobs were unviable, or that, people needed to retrain. I think to myself, like, if I was 18 years old and I just started a degree in music and I was in my first year of university, which is also a separate other complete mess. Yeah. What am I thinking about my career choice for the next? I mean, I've been doing this for like 5 to 10 years, kind of, I don't know at what point it'd be probably actually very hard for me to pin the point I became a professional, right?
Yeah.
But like, I've had a degree of existential angst about all this, let alone someone who's like 18 and, grade 8 saxophone and has dedicated a lot of time and is planning to go to a conservatoire and so on. Like, I'm panicking, let alone them, I think we need to like do our best to reassure those people that whatever, a politician says, that there is an industry there for them, and that it is a really innovative industry that is going to keep on adapting and it's going to keep on finding ways to work, and that, this isn't going to last forever, because at some point we are going to be able to return with some vigor, I think, to being able to put on gigs again where people are allowed to have fun at them, like dance and sing and those old concepts that we seem to be forgetting about.
Those very old-fashioned ideas of enjoyment.
Yeah, make fun legal again.
Make fun again. I like it.
Yeah.
Now, let's catch up again with Helena Summerfield as she talks to the lovely Gilly Jarman from BlueJam Arts in Penrith. The lockdown situation gave their company an opportunity to take their wide range of music education online, where their young, passionate team of musicians has developed a whole host of digital music activities and resources.
Awesome. Let's have a look.
So it sounds like BlueJam Arts have been doing some really exciting things during the pandemic. Can you tell me anything about what you've been doing?
Yeah, I can actually. I mean, obviously, when the whole thing started, it was a big blow for us because we've just set up community art space. I mean, we've been in it for a year or so fully, but we were just starting to do these fortnightly benefit gigs. And we had a guitar festival planned. We were starting to create a really nice live local venue that was being run by the young people that we work with. And then all of a sudden that just stopped. But what was great was that we also have a side where we've been doing quite a lot online already. All of us use Logic, we use we're all musicians who are used to producing music digitally, and we know how to record, we know what's possible and what's not possible. And I think what we decided straight away was that we weren't going to try to replicate the sort of work that we did physically with what we were doing online, that we were going to see, okay, so what can we do online that we can't do physically? So one of the things we've been doing, the first thing we did was we did a series of jazz videos. So we had different people from the team and guests, such as the amazing Gemma Fries, who did videos for us, which were sort of a mix of a video to watch and a teaching video. And they were really popular, and they also brought the team together because we sort of worked out what skills we had, how expensive it was to do it. I mean, the fact that we could do everything in-house, all the editing and the creating and the writing, as well as all the marketing, everything was in-house. So actually we could do it really cheaply. So that was a really good model. And then we also had a project that we had to finish called Voices and Choices, where we were working with children who are looked after. And we were able to do a really successful summer project with them, all on Zoom, doing games, making animations, creating sound effects with sounds they had in their houses. And they came up with the most amazing, amazing material. We also bought into Soundtrap quite early. So Soundtrap, for people who don't know what it is, it's like Logic, but it's online. And it's very, very easy to work with people remotely. So another thing that I was doing, instead of doing my improv choirs, I did for a few weeks try to actually do the improv online, and it just was so unsatisfying that then I turned it into a sort of sharing of my sort of slightly quirky takes on different jazz standards. So it's called Jilly Online Jazz Sessions. And basically I introduce a song each week and everybody's on mute, and I'll talk the way through the song. I'll talk about intervals, I'll talk about basic chords, I'll talk about how the melody fits, you know, whether it just sits on one note or if it follows the chords or if it hangs, you know, so sort of like trying to be not too technical, but actually upskill, especially singers. And that's been grown-ups, sorry, they're not really grown-ups probably, but adults from all over, actually. So I've got a lot of people from the Northeast, from the Women in Jazz groups I used to do, plus people I used to teach in London, like in the last century. And so that has been a wonderful thing that has supported me through making me sort of feel connected to people. And also, it's been something that people seem to be very invested in, actually. So that's one thing that we've been doing, the Jilly Online Jazz. We've been doing the jazz videos. We've also been doing a series of webinars, which have been run by a group of young people that we've been working with. And one of the great things about working online is that about 3 of the people who weren't necessarily right in the middle of the group have sort of taken leadership roles because they've been able to be present despite living a long way away or not being able to access transport. So in some ways we've been able to be more inclusive and be more supportive to people who hadn't been able to access what we did so much before. And there's been a couple of really, really wonderful success stories from that.
That's brilliant. I was going to say, it sort of struck me that with going online, it means that you can kind of open the doors of BlueJam art, you know, to people who don't live in Penrith, who you know, transport would be an issue. You mentioned, you know, ex-students down in London. So it means that you can take your music to a far, you know, greater area, which is brilliant, I think.
Yes, and it also means that we've been able to utilise all the skills of our team, because our team, BlueJam team, we've got Tom Worker in Manchester, we've got Bryony John Pinto in London, we've got Sarah Gray over in the Northeast, and then we've got other people sort of dotted around Cumbria, as well as a few of us in Penrith, that we've been able to work together, and it means that the younger members of the team have actually taken on leading roles, and now they are actually pushing the agenda forward.
It sounds like you've got like a really tech savvy team as well. For a lot of organisations, you know, lockdown, it was a steep learning curve. You know, we all had to come to terms with delivering on Zoom and you know, learning new skills. So it sounds as though your team were kind of ready to hit the ground running there. And
I think the other thing,
it's brilliant.
I think the other thing is that because it's a younger team and it's a more diverse team, is that we've actually been really able to like respond to things like Black Lives Matter and make sure that we always have a woman or we always have someone who from the BAME community, although actually we've got a real issue with using that term, but yeah, but basically, so we've been able to really like get such a lot of first-hand brilliant advice, really sort of friendly advice from really cool, you know, young musicians who are sort of like massive on TikTok or whatever. And that's something that our young people in Cumbria might not be able to access normally, but they find themselves on a Zoom screen actually having conversations with these young artists, you know, who are sort of like out of Cumbria, you know, in an urban setting with a lot more access to things than our young people have. So that's been really, really useful.
Oh, I think that sounds absolutely fantastic. So
The other, sorry, there's one other strand that before I forget. So when restrictions have permitted it, I have been doing some free improvisation sessions with Jeff Bartholomew, who lives in Penrith. He's a fantastic trumpet player, and both of us have been using a variety of different software, you know, like sampler and loop pedals, as well as playing the trumpet and playing the piano. And we've really come up with some things that I'm very, very happy with. We did a free improvisation for Freiraum, which is a Europe-wide project, using the organ in the Methodist chapel in Carlisle. So that's on our YouTube channel. We'll be doing more of that. So if you go to the BlueJam Arts YouTube channel, you can see all of our jazz videos, all of our webinars. They're on things like composing emotions, careers in music, producing music at home, content creation for musicians, how to get gigs, being a creative director, lots and lots of really interesting stuff.
it sounds amazing. And what's your website if people want to also?
Yeah, so it's bluejamarts.org.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for talking to me, Gilly, and I will definitely be checking out some of the links that you've mentioned.
Thank you. Bye.
Lovely to hear from Gilly there. The BlueJam team are really inspiring.
Yes, they're doing great work. And from there, let's hop over and check out some more brand new music from the Northern family. Manchester trumpeter Graham South has released his album By and By, featuring a quartet of incredible Northern players. John spoke to him about putting a project together, releasing new music in lockdown, and how to approach music with both tradition and invention in mind. Let's go!
I play in lots of the kind of a lot of groups with the same kind of people for a while, through Beats and Pieces, big band, and people like Johnny Hunter, the drummer, and Anton, his brother, and their bands. I also play lots of orchestral music, so I freelance a little bit with some of the symphony orchestras in the north, and I write music, and I also work with a group called the VENES Collective, which is a kind of new music group playing improvised and composed music. My album, which came out in September, is called By and By. It's a quartet with Richard Jones on the piano, Seth Bennett on the bass, and Johnny Hunter on the drums. We did a gig of the music back in 2018 at a festival in Southwell or Southwell in Nottingham, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And at that festival, we were playing. I play in the orchestra as a orchestral trumpet player there, and we were playing a piece by Michael Tippett, called A Child of Our Time. My friend Marcus, who runs the festival, wanted to do a jazz gig, and the way that they run the festival, they program it really carefully, and he's trying to kind of persuade people in a kind of rural Nottinghamshire town to come to fairly highbrow programs, but by presenting them really openly and inviting it as a new experience. And so rather than just kind of play a few standards and well, the jobs are good, and I said, how about I arrange the spirituals from the Tippett for a quartet, and and we kind of tie it in. So I basically, like Johnny, I played Johnny Hunter all the time. In fact, we've been playing together in the last couple of weeks. We've been playing together in parks and things, and in the woods. Him just on sniff and me on the trumpet. But yeah, so I play in Johnny's quartet, and I basically couldn't imagine the project without him. And then I played with Rich Jones a lot. He plays in Beats and Pieces, and he plays with so much freedom, and he's one of those pianists that you just kind of just say, well, all of these guys are just say, off you go, and they get making music. I mean, you're like that as well, John. And then Seth and Johnny play so well together that it seemed like a nice idea, and we always thought it was going to be just that gig and call it a nice job, and but it felt quite magical, to sound a bit corny. And on the night we were playing in this room called the Archbishop's Palace, by Savile Minster, this like 500-year-old building, and they were like, let's record it, make an album, come on, let's do it. So I got Ben Cottrell on board to see if we could do it on the Efpi record label, and he was up for that, so we put it out. It's really difficult playing that kind of music and kind of learning more and more about where it came from, but also being like four white guys in Britain in 2018, where trying to make sure that I did it justice. There's a lot of nods to some like 60s jazz stuff, which I didn't really consciously do. Like even though like By and By is the track By and By, I did as a kind of jazz waltz on a one chord thing, and it genuinely, I don't know why I didn't think of it until we were playing it about my favourite things. It didn't really, about John Coltrane, it didn't really come up, and it's like, oh, of course. I was actually kind of thinking I was actually more thinking about Ornette when I was writing that. I really liked some of those 60s albums that kind of really in exploring the kind of major key in a really free way. I actually set off when I started. I thought, all right, I'm gonna arrange it. There's gonna be loads of extra bits, and there's gonna be detailed sections, and then you realise when you're writing for those people, it's going to be better if you improvise, which is partly lack of my confidence in my detailed writing, but partly it's what gets them going. Releasing without a tour was maybe more difficult than it would be for other people, in that I didn't really have any social media presence. That's suddenly turned into almost the only way of getting the word out about the album. So I had to up my game a tiny bit with that. That was difficult because it's there's so much traffic and so many people are making music. Things like Bandcamp Friday have been really good, but I think there's also an element of fatigue with it now, that you're like, it's coming up this week, and suddenly everyone's trying to get you to buy their music again, and so trying to hit the spot a few times. And I think because we've put it out on the streaming platforms as well, which I have mixed feelings about, to be honest, mainly negative. But we did a pre-release thing, and quite a few people bought CDs, quite a few people bought bought downloads as a pre-order. And then the day that it appeared on Spotify, there was a real drop-off, and and it might have been that everyone had bought it who was going to buy it already, but it was like, okay, yeah. Django Bates released his CD and just said, it's a CD, this is how you get it, you buy the CD from me. And so I just bought it straight away, because it was like, I want to hear that music, and that's the only way I'm going to be able to hear it. So yeah, I did a bit of social media. I had to be brave and get in touch with people that might have more of a platform. My friend John Hutchinson has a brass website called Mouthpiece Online. It's all written interviews, it's not podcasts. I got in touch with Rob Cope and did the Jazz podcast. Yeah, the big bit of advice I got out of that is by kind of doing that, you realise people are just positive. If you have good intentions and you've made some music you're proud of, and you get in touch with someone and say, any chance that you might be able to help out with this, as long as you're polite about it, the response is really positive. I didn't have anyone say, not for us, like, who do you think you are? Like Rob, I think Rob had Dave Douglas on his podcast two episodes before me. And don't be ashamed of just getting all your friends and family to buy it. That's not a negative thing. So you can look down the pre-orders and go, oh, well, that one's just so-and-so's cousin, and that one's my old housemate, and that one's... I think that's fine.
Yeah.
It's good music.
Yeah, totally. It's still
going to
audience.
good people.
Yeah,
exactly.
So great to hear about that album from Graham, and I really recommend checking it out. It is a joyous listen.
Absolutely. And all the music we're featuring in this episode can be found in the description of this video if you want to check it out.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell for notifications.
Hit that bell. Okay. Now, though, it's time to take a trip through the electric garden to my favourite place on earth.
You mean... Megs Musical Toolshed! Who have you got in the Toolshed for Christmas, Megs?
I spoke to the mad professor of Northern guitar, Craig Scott. He's a restless explorer of musical textures and technology, and we talked about how homemade microphones and DIY electronics come together with improvisation on his new record.
That sounds bonkers, and I can't wait to hear it.
Hello, Craig. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm alright, not bad. Keeping sane and safe in these strange times.
Yeah, excellent.
There's no sense in having something that doesn't make sense.
I'm going to get straight into it. We want to talk all about your equipment and how it inspires your creative process. So firstly, what equipment do you use to make music?
I originally was a guitar player, and then I went from building pedals, circuit bending kids' toys, and I got into recording more and more focused on recording, I suppose, than live playing, although I was still doing a lot of live stuff at the time. So I got into, just out of necessity really, building studio equipment, so things like microphones and preamps and various different effects and that kind of thing. And then it's kind of just spiraled out of control from that point really. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing at the moment is using like digital microcontrollers to automate MIDI control tape machines or CD players to malfunction. There's always been an emphasis on malfunction as well.
I've watched them all, and that just makes sense.
Or turn the malfunction into a function of its own and try and embrace. I think that came from kind of mainly, I suppose, having access to digital recording equipment where everything is very clean, and there's this kind of fetish to do with analog gear and old gear. And the way I was perceiving it at the time was that a lot of the kind of characteristic of those pieces of equipment come from essentially the imperfections that they have with them compared to digital, because digital is so kind of, if it malfunctions, it just, you get nothing out of it more often than not. There's no, apart, I mean, you get interesting digital glitchy things sometimes, but
Yeah.
likelihood is it's all or nothing. Whereas there's a whole kind of spectrum of strange transformations you can get from a lot of analog gear. Over the last, I don't know, it's probably going on like 7 years or something like that now. I've built a full kind of studio setup, so a full range of different types of microphones and preamps, compressors, EQs, delays, tape, blah, 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 lots of different stuff. Yeah, I've used quite a wide variety of different types of equipment, but I suppose the goal is to try and blend the feeling of a live performance. So a lot of the raw material I use is either from live recordings, you know, or live in a room kind of musician playing acoustic instrument, or like field recordings and that kind of thing. So the source material a lot of the time is something that feels very natural and it's just captured in a room, and then trying to kind of twist people's perception of that with all the processes, but not, I mean, it does get to the point where it's completely twisted, but like I like to try and hold the line between the two, so you're kind of maintaining some form of uncanny kind of illusion between something that feels natural and something that feels kind of synthetic or artificial, I guess. And the album that I'm working on at the moment is almost some form of inversion of that, where it's all computer controlled but still performed on live instruments. So you've got this unnatural precision of like digital control where everything's to like a clock and stuff like that. But there's all sources are acoustic, so there's still that kind of juxtaposition between something that feels like artificial and something that feels real.
Yeah, could you just show us some of the instruments that you use? Do a little quick demo for us.
Yeah, so here's some of the microphones that I've built. Here's some of the outboard studio gear that I've used to process things and mix and produce. Here's some of the automated tape machines and CD players that I've been using recently. And here's some other instruments that are all computer-controlled acoustic instruments.
Brilliant, that's fantastic.
No sense in having something that doesn't make sense.
So you have a new album coming out. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the album is called I Am Revolting.
Brilliant, love that.
So it's kind of trying to, this weird place that we're in at the moment where, I don't know, it feels like everyone, regardless of their like political outlook or whatever the position is, like trying to rebel or revolt against the kind of what they perceive as the prevailing ideology or what have you, which is a lot to do with the internet, I think, and kind of tribal kind of wormhole you end up in, having yourself reflected back. You know, it's easy to get radicalized on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
And so a mixture between that and also this weird, like I was talking about before, the juxtaposition between like a digital identity and the reality of being like a fleshy, kind of real human, with all the kind of ugly parts that come with that. So it's essentially like live studio record of musicians playing acoustic instruments that's been over quite a long period of time processed and warped. And yeah, there's this emphasis on trying to like maintain some sort of balance of a studio illusion and perception of like a live performance in there. And there's also it's developed over such a long time. It was like while I was kind of making a lot of the studio equipment and basically essentially building the studio in order to facilitate doing this on no budget. So they kind of evolved at the same time. So it was a very long process, and there was a lot of kind of processing lots of material, building up huge big projects with like 200-300 tracks in them, and then kind of like chipping away, sculpting things out of that. So there's like a lot of variation, and it's very dense at times. And it's quite, some of the material, like written material, is quite repetitive, and it's kind of about just like recontextualization of a small amount of material. I tried not to kind of like, keep to find a way to kind of keep it quite refined in a sense. Or it gives people something to hang on to, I suppose, as well, if like a lot of processing is unfamiliar and stuff like that. So then there's also this element of it like being kind of quite prismatic, I suppose, like the internet and internet culture, I suppose, how you get like the evolution of memes and that kind of thing, where there's like one small idea that is kind of twisted in like thousands and thousands of different ways. So quite interested in that. So it's got that kind of element about it, I suppose, as well. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I don't really know what to say about it. Listen to it. It'll be coming out in December, hopefully, or very early next year. If not, I'm definitely going to put out at least a single in December, if not the whole thing. And it will be, I'm going to release it on as a USB stick encased in a concrete brain.
Brilliant.
So for the last one, I did like latex brains where you could like do a home lobotomy and you get the download code out. So I thought a variation on that would be
wow.
concrete brain with USB stick, and then there'll be all the usual digital stuff and maybe vinyl or something. It seems like the only worthwhile physical thing to put out nowadays, other than novelty brains.
That's
so yeah,
amazing. I love it.
It should be available to hear now.
No sense in having something that doesn't make sense.
Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been really interesting, and letting us see all of this amazing stuff that you've made. It's so cool, and I want more. I want to see more of it.
Oh, there will be more. It's an addiction. I can't stop, so there will be more.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, nice one, Meg.
And we'll see you very soon. Bye.
Cool.
So I think that's us nearly done for today and nearly done for 2020.
Oh, 2020. Thank you so much to everyone who has watched, contributed, commented, and liked. It means so much, and this is new for us. We've never done anything like this before. It's been so exciting.
Everyone here at Jazz North Online would love to take this chance to wish you all a safe and happy Christmas wherever you are. Please take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
Yes, Merry Christmas, John.
Merry Christmas, Megs. We'll see you next year.
But as a final treat, here's Craig Scott again with some music from his upcoming release to see us out. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.